Okay, as the name suggests, mind style. What is mind? How would you define mind? What is your mind? A complex network. And if we talk about mind with respect to language, then it is the toolbox that gives you the prompts to use your language either in the written form or the spoken form. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, if you talk about cognitive linguistics, what is cognition? Thinking pattern, your mind. Now, basically, cognitive linguistics, with the help of psychology, all these three different, you can call it theories. Cognition की अलग theory है, linguistics की अलग है, psychology की अलग है. Then they come together. They come to a conclusion that is mind style. How? Mind would be connected to cognition and psychology, and style would entail the linguistic perspective. यहाँ तक बात समझ आई? अब there is a chapter in your book that I've shared, mind style. Read the first paragraph. Chapter number 6. So what does it say, the first paragraph?
What is the two things? What is perceived and what perceives it?
Definitely. They give you two sentences and they want you to interpret it. The first sentence is, it was a bright cold day in April and the clocks were striking. Second one is, Bob Cowley outstretched talons gripped the black deep sounding chords. Both these sentences are odd. Why are they odd?
How can a clock strike 13? That's all.
Okay, so semantically in our mind it is not logical for this thing to happen. That is why they are odd, right? But for different reasons. Both the sentences are odd but for different reasons. Can you identify those reasons?
Because in the first one, clocks can't strike, you can say something that's physical, but in the next sentence, you can't grip for it. It's not more like abstract.
That's correct. See, if you remember, I might have used that sentence where I might have written that the sandwiches ate the birds. Now, sandwiches cannot eat the birds. It's grammatically correct, transparent, direct, but semantically, if you want to look at the meaning, that would be a problem. But if we go into the deep layer meaning, then sandwiches can actually eat birds. How? Do you have an answer? If the sandwiches have material which is not organic, which is not healthy, eventually in the long run, eating such crap out of dustbin, it will have health hazards on their health and they will die eventually. So वो कैसे concept बदल जाता है? It only depends on your mind how you want to perceive it. Similarly, if I say that the ghost entered the room, right now only the students are entering. But can you imagine a ghost entering? Sometimes you cannot see the ghosts and they are there. It depends on your cognition whether you want to think about it or not. So when there are characterization, do you understand what is characterization? In a short story or a novel or in a poem, there are different characters depicted. The author uses different techniques, devices, figures of speech in order to portray or depict, display, illustrate a character. Sometimes they have magical elements to them. Sometimes they have very realistic touch to them. Have you seen Vampire Diaries?
Yes, yes.
Now, they have this capability, the vampires, that they look into your eyes and they can make you do stuff that you don't want to do. They can compel you. So, this is what the author did. In reality, it doesn't happen. It is happening because the author wanted it to happen. So, if we analyze it for mind style, so definitely the author is using a technique taken from cognition, linguistics and psychology. Of course, when they want to compel somebody to do something, they have to actually utter the words, go get me this, go kill somebody, go do this or that. Just eye to eye contact is not enough. So language is there, psychology is there, cognition is there, that how mind is controlled. And you might have heard about there is a technique in psychology, it's called hypnotism.
Yes.
What does it mean by being hypnotized?
When you control someone's mind.
When you control somebody's mind, films mein dekha, I don't know the technique exactly, it's just that they look at it and then they switch to the world in their own mind. They have a realm in their own mind. Hamare mind maybe there are so many compartments are there. Some of them they are very they are sitting there in our unconscious or subconscious, and consciously we only exhibit things and actions which are required. But deep down under, if we dive into our own minds, we have dark secrets, we have fears, we want certain things that we cannot let the people know that we need these things or we want these things, and we try to hide them. We have those thoughts in our mind. We cannot just take them out and put them somewhere in the drawer. It stays there. So when we are writing, when we are giving a reaction or an action, it has to do with psychology and your cognition. Sometimes the repressed or denied kind of feelings and thought processes that you put in your subconscious or unconscious, they react. They wake up with a click. Hota hai? Sometimes some people are very nice, and then the other times they snap at you as if they are going to slap you. Have you seen it happen? You must have analyzed them, that what's wrong? She's so nice. How can she behave or act or react like this? This is not her. This is not how she behaves on daily basis. So those thinking processes जो हमारे mind में कहीं ना कहीं से contribute कर रहे होते हैं, they make us do stuff that we don't want to. For example, मैं अब यहाँ से पढ़ाते cognition की बात करते करते ये फाइल यहाँ ज़ोर से मारूँ और दरवाज़ा पटक कर चली जाऊँ, you would be perplexed. What happened? Why would she do that? You never know what triggered me. You understand triggers?
Yes.
Psychology is very common nowadays, and people actually analyze everybody with anything that they can get hold of. हम करते हैं, it's common. लेकिन we need to be tolerant. We need to psychoanalyze or analyze your own self. Let's say if you see a reaction or an action which is not nice, it only depends on your action what's going to happen. If you take it to your heart and nerves, you're going to snap, you're going to burst, you're going to react irrationally. But if you take a pause, think about it, what's happening, why the next person is doing it, then you can have a conclusion which is controlled. Definitely you want revenge if somebody has dissed you, disrespected you, slapped you, bit you, whatsoever. But immediate reactions are not necessarily required until and unless it's a murder attack, or they are actually going to shoot you or put a knife in you. That's another thing. But if somebody is just disrespecting you, you can take a time, take your own toll and wait for the correct time. Do you wait for the correct time? We don't. We only listen to answer. Okay, bring it on. Look, मैं बताता हूँ. That is how we are. Even as the students and teachers, what do? We don't like to be questioned. We just want to speak and leave. You don't want me to only speak, you want to ask questions as well. You must have seen teachers, because you have been studying for almost 14 years now, right? So आपने ऐसे टीचर्स देखे होंगे, they snap at you if you ask any questions. खामखा में कोई और बात लाकर they would actually जो पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू या जो बात हो रही है उसको रीडायरेक्ट कर देंगे, डिस्पर्स कर देंगे. These are reactions. What do you think, why these reactions are there? If a teacher refuses to answer, or let's say Hanaf asks me that I don't understand this, and I am like, okay, we can talk about it later. That's okay. We can talk to each other 101. But if I say, okay, shut up, you don't understand anything ever, so let's move on, that is a reaction which is not required. Now that reaction could be triggered because Hanaf keeps on asking irrelevant or relevant questions which I'm not able to answer. Yes, हो सकता है ना, मेरे पास भी तो limitations, I don't know everything. Yes, so वो cognition जो है, जो मेरा thinking process है, वो मुझे ऐसे act या react करने पे वो करता है. Similarly, if you talk about a character in a novel or a short story or poetry or anything else, even in the rap songs there are characters. I could recall one, but I don't want to pronounce that word. So जो कॉग्निशन है वो उन चीज़ों को बनाता है. कोई स्टोरी बताएं जो आपने अभी अभी पढ़ी हो रिसेंटली. Have you read that the what's it called by Edgar Allan Poe? Yes. Have you read that?
Yes, ma'am.
If you want to analyze it for mind style or cognition or psychology or cognitive linguistics, can we?
Yes.
Definitely. Because the triggering point is that vulture eye, and there's no logical justification given for it. Even the narrator, the story is being narrated by the protagonist, who actually kills the old man by saying that I'm not a madman, I'm very precise, I can do this, I can do that. A madman cannot do that. The speech or the word choices he uses are very intact. एक mentally unstable बंदा इस तरह की languages use नहीं कर सकता. However, psychology differs with the opinion, because they say that a psychologically challenged person could have very good speech, very good coherent thoughts, and still be very violent and volatile or imbecile and a moron as well. It just only depends on the person कि वो किस तरह का. ठीक है? Do you understand what is an imbecile or a moron or a stupid person? एक तो होता है ना, somebody is reacting and acting emotionally and being stupid, that is something else. Certain people, they are cognitively morons or unstable or imbeciles, that they don't have that capability or IQ level to meet that particular thing. Do you know kids with Down syndrome? What happens is that their mind is not properly developed physiologically, and that is the reason that they take more time as compared to a normal child. For example, if they are 24 years old, they are going to behave as if they are only 6 or 7 years old. So they are not called in psychology as imbeciles and morons, but this is how we, daily people or in daily life we use such words for them. And if we categorize them in psychology, then they have terminologies for these people, that their cognitive level is not up to the mark or it's not normal. For example, we do not use our cognition to the required amount. We don't. Do we? जहाँ ज़रूरत नहीं है, बल्कि ज़रूरत भी है वहाँ भी नहीं करते. We leave it. ठीक है, थोड़ा बचा लेते, क्या ज़रूरत है खपने, थोड़ी सी असाइनमेंट कुछ मुश्किल आ जाए, 5 नंबर है, let it go. That is how our thinking process works. So time and again, when we are reading something, when we are doing something, we are doing a stylistic analysis with the help of our mind. It is not something new. It is understood. It's just that we are going to look at some models given by different stylicians. Models, when I say models, I mean to say that the theory stays the same, that comes from cognitive linguistics, and the concept is mind style, but then we have models having different steps One is given by Fowler, the other one is given by there's another one, yes, Leach. I found one for you, so that let's talk about all the concepts from now on with regards to Leach and Mick. Yes, so that you know at least what they are talking about. If you want to talk about the history of mind style, so it comes from Russian formalism. In the presentations you did mention Russian formalism, and they believed in certain things. I jotted down some points for you, and I'm going to share those points with you. But once you sit down, I want you to read this chapter at your own. The chapter is totally based on an example from two different sources. First, understand those sources and read the analysis. Chapter number 6 in this particular book does not talk about the concept itself, but the analysis of it. Right? So let me share that document with you. Let's read that and then we can move forward. Is it making sense so far that how mind is always involved, be it in the depiction of the antagonist, protagonist, narrator, or the author itself, or us? When we analyze somebody for their works, we also use these techniques in one way or another. This is the document that I've been mentioning. Okay, it's sent. So if you read, it says cognitive stylistics is a field in which theories from linguistic, cognition linguistics, or cognitive psychology are combined to arrive at a conclusion about literary and non-literary texts. So you can analyze these texts with the help of these three combined theories. Cognitive stylistics combines the kind of explicit, rigorous, and detailed linguistic analysis of literary text that is typical of the stylistic tradition with the systemic and theoretically informed consideration of the cognitive structures and processes that underlie the production of and reception of language. Now, whatever we have discussed so far for 5 to 10 minutes, this is what sums it up. Read it again. Silently, individually, read the definition that I've mentioned over here. The definition is by Semino and Culpeper. These are two very recent stylicians. So does it make sense, or do you need more clarity? Look at the first line. Cognitive stylistics combines the kind of explicit, rigorous, and detailed linguistic analysis of literary text that is typical of stylistic tradition with a systemic and theoretically informed consideration. So what's happening over here is that they are talking about that this particular theory is multidisciplinary. It takes insights from psychology, linguistics, and cognition itself, right? And then they come to a conclusion, and the conclusion is very much relevant to the stylistic analysis. Yesterday, when we were talking about foregrounding, you must have observed that foregrounding could be on the levels of language as well. Linguistic analysis के जो levels हैं, they can be incorporated. Same goes for mind style. You can bring those pillars with mind style as well, with cognition as well. You can look at the author, how the author has used a graphological structure of their poem, short story, or a novel. Why would they use such a structure? One analysis is going to be done by us, that what we think. The other analysis could be going into the mind of the character or the author itself. How can we do that? If the author has used 6 paragraphs and first 5 paragraphs they have the same number of words and sentences, but the 6th paragraph has twice the original text, then we can see that concluding paragraph or the last paragraph has something more to offer. It has more emphasis, it has more information for us to analyze. So structural basis where we just analyze a piece of written material on the basis of structure, very basic structure of word count, sentence count, and how they are different from each other. So we can come to a conclusion. Maybe the author wanted the readers to understand the conclusion in detail so that they can have self-reflection or they can have cognition regarding it. When I refer to cognition, I simply mean to say that you can relate it to your own thinking processes. When you read Western culture, sometimes you find it difficult to relate to it, to understand what's happening and why is it happening, because we do not associate with the things that are happening in it. If we start talking about African culture, all of a sudden, most of us, we don't understand their culture, we don't know their culture, and we will have question. Similarly, if there are African students, they would not understand what kind of perplexed and multidimensional cultural values we have. We are not on the same paper on the same path. If we are 40 people at the moment, 40 of us use different cultural patterns that have been given to us by our families, and they are there in our cognition in one way or another, even if we like it or we don't like it. So they are going to have an influence on you. So you see, it's not something that you can take it apart. You can't take it apart. It's not tangible. It is complex. It is interdependent, codependent, interconnected, all of it, one way or another. यहाँ तक बात समझ आई? Stylistics क्या करता है? Stylistics come to a conclusion through different pathways to come to a meaning, and this aids it. Psychological interpretations adding to it, it simply aids the stylistics in order to look at the mind style, narrative styles, how the character speaks, dialogues can be analyzed in it, narration can be analyzed in it, how the narrator, third person narrator, incorporates different details in it. Sometimes you have short stories in which the narrator is somebody different and the protagonist is somebody different. It so happens, right? So you can have analysis of these things in this. Kuch samajh aayi? When you read the analysis, that might make more sense. Let's read the analysis. It is a multidisciplinary theoretical approach that aims at providing a cognitive framework to obtain greater explanatory power of literary text based on a firmer empirical basis. Culpeper and Semino explain, in the traditional field of stylistics, linguistic theories were the tools used to predict and explain interpretations of text. Now this is what I just told you, that different tools, different categories were there for you to analyze. On the other hand, in cognitive stylistic, linguistic theories are complemented with cognitive theories that supply a link to mental processes. Now, in order to understand the connection between the two, you need to understand mental processes. Do you understand, or do you know any mental process? Do you know who is Sigmund Freud? Who is he? He was a psychiatrist who gave the levels of psyche, id, ego and superego. Do you know? No? Do you know any theory from psychology? Okay, so what happens in behaviorist theory? Did you have psycholinguistics?
Yes.
Then you must understand it. Come on. Okay. I can give you the basics. By Sigmund Freud, there were 3 levels: id, ego, सुपर ईगो. मैं बताऊँ, इट्स वेरी इजी, आपको बहुत इजीली समझ आएगी और मेरे लिए आपको ये एग्जांपल्स देना आसान हो जाएगा. Sigmund Freud said there are 3 levels of psyche. Id is your instinctive level, where your instincts work. Ego is reality principle. Instincts में pleasure आता है. Do you understand what's pleasure? Yes. What is it?
It's a state.
guess when you're very much in the, you can use the word ecstasy for it, when you're feeling the extreme joy that takes you to the world beyond the real world, when you have everything that you wanted and you're in the state of joy. If we talk about pleasure in other sense, it has to do with sexual needs and interactions. But instincts की बात करें तो आपको पता है as a human, as animals, we have different instincts. Do we?
Yes.
As an individual, we have different instincts. We have different thought processes involved and associated with the concept pleasure itself. Right? What is reality? Let's say I'm hungry. My instinct, my pleasure principle is telling me to eat something. My ego tells me go get some food, right? And my superego tells me how to get that food. It makes me think between right and wrong. Let's say somebody is eating in the corridor and I'm hungry and I go grab it. Just mujhe bhook lagi hai. That's not right. That is not ego, that is not superego, that is just pleasure principle making you crazy. So ऐसे characters होते हैं. Are there characters such as these whose it is very much prominent in their characters? What about this character, the Telltale Hearts main character who actually kills the man? His id is, जिसको बच्चे ID भी पढ़ते हैं, id is hyperactive, that he cannot, and he takes pleasure in killing him. Eventually, his superego takes over because he's caught by his own mistake, because he's guilty, because morality takes you to a guilt trip, and once you're on a guilt trip, you end up in the right hands, in the right space. Guilt trip से बाहर आना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. So इस स्टोरी में बहुत easily आप देख सकते हैं कि उसका reality क्या होता. अगर बहुत उनको प्रॉब्लम आई कर रही थी, he should have left the job, go get another job, leave the man, get away from it. But the reality principle was overshadowed by pleasure and morality principle. So this is basic level of psyche. Now this is just a basic foundational layer of psychological interpretation that are there in the field of psychology or cognitive linguistics or cognition itself. So if we analyze all the short stories or the novels that you have read so far with these three, you will definitely find so many characters going through superego all the time, that their morality is always conflicted. They are not sure whether they are right or wrong. जिसको हम conflict कहते हैं. किसी भी story का analysis करते हैं तो we come to a problem or a rising action or a conflict where the character is not sure what to do and how to do it. तो अब अगर आप उसका mind style analysis करना चाहें, you can bring in a terminology, a concept from real sciences, that is psychology, into linguistic analysis. And how would you do that? We know that how superego came over by his speech in the story, when he says that I am not the culprit, I haven't killed somebody, and then there is I think पसीना भी आता है इसको, इस करेक्टर को. अगर आप एक स्टोरी है My Son the Fanatic, have you read that? No? What about The Gift of Magi? Can you find ego in it? Reality principle? There is a point when the characters actually realize what has happened. There is no morality question. Superego does not take over. It is not there. It's just sheer exhibition of love. Isn't that so? And eventually when, I think it's Della cuts her hair and he brings some combs and she's devastated. That's a reality check, that I don't have the hair to comb with. What's gonna happen? And what Jim does, he actually responds with a very good reaction, that I love you anyways, whether you have hair or you don't have hair. So that's their ego taking part in their real life. Reality principle. Reality तो यही होनी चाहिए ना कि regardless of the looks and the body shape and everything, you should love the other person. Can you do that?
No.
See how complex it can get. Is it complex?
No.
It's very interesting. I like it. अगर आपने psycholinguistics में कोई और theory अभी आपने कहा था behaviorist, आपने कोई innateness, right? So what is innateness? Do you know who's John Locke? John Locke. Why do I need to know so many things? So bad. John Locke was a philosopher who said that you have an innate urge to write something. Thought and language. Definitely. उसने कहा कि आपके माइंड में एक स्लेट है जिस पे आप लिखते हैं, जिसे टैबुलर रसा कहते हैं. You must have read it. It's very common. जैसे आपने लैंग्वेज एक्विजिशन डिवाइस पढ़ी होगी, LAD पढ़ी होगी. सो वो लेटर ऑन साइकोलॉजिस्ट ने उसको नाम दिया, लेकिन जॉन लॉक ने बहुत पहले कहा था दैट यू हैव समथिंग इन योर माइंड ऑन विच यू राइट विद योर एक्सपीरियंसेस, फीलिंग्स एंड एक्सपेक्टेशंस. ये तीनों चीज़ें मिलके आपकी वो स्लेट लिखते हैं. ऑफ कोर्स व्हेन वी आर बोर्न वी डोंट हैव जेलसी, वी डोंट अंडरस्टैंड हाउ पीपल आर doing injustice to you, we don't understand what is happiness, we don't understand what is being sad. Eventually we look around with the help of behaviorist theory, we understand that this is laughing and this is crying. जब हम पैदा होते हैं, in our mind we don't know if we are crying and we are sad, not at all. We label it. जैसे आपने कल या परसों कहा था ना कि we have been doing all these things for our entire degree but we have never labeled it. So eventually they labeled all the actions and reactions that we are doing as a human being or otherwise. So ये भी एक labeling ही है. आपने LAD के बारे में पढ़ा होगा, acquisition device के बारे में पढ़ा होगा, and they must have told you how it is different for L1 and L2 and L3 as well. First language, second language and third language. So ये सारी चीज़ें आप इसमें भी ला सकते हैं. Innateness की बात करें तो it has to do with innateness. It is इनबिल्ट. ठीक है, फिजियोलॉजिकल लेवल पे. साइकोलॉजिकल लेवल पे बात करें तो इननेटनेस क्या होती है? Inbuilt, inborn, something that is there inside you already. Your inner self, your inner exhibition, how you exhibit yourself, God gifted, and your dark fantasies as well. There is this psychologist whose name is Carl Jung, and he has talked about. Have you talked about Carl Jung?
Yes.
Somewhere?
Yes.
Down the lane, you must have talked about it. He has given this theory of archetypes. Do you know those?
Yeah.
Where he talks about animus and anima, shadow and yourself, hero. All these. ठीक है, हीरो वाली भी पढ़ी है. आर्किटाइपल क्या है कि आपकी पर्सनालिटी के आर्किटाइप्स हैं. देयर आर डिफरेंट आर्किटाइप्स एंड यू बिहेव अकॉर्डिंगली. यू हैव अ शैडो सेल्फ, यू हैव अ शैडो का ऑपोजिट क्या होगा? prominent or presented self. I don't remember the terminology. Then you have anima and animus. What is anima and animus? Anima is your feminine side and animus is your masculine side. Every female has a masculine side and every male has a feminine side as well. That is what he says, because when we study him, he was a traumatized child whose mother left him because she went crazy. And he would describe his mother as humble, beautiful, warm, and at the same time he would call her ruthless, pathetic, and self-absorbed. And he would say my mummy had two personalities, day personality and night personality. And eventually he came up with those two terminologies, introversion and extroversion. This is how psychology came into being. Introversion and extroversion, you must understand, right? So if we do the analysis of certain characters, we can take these two terminologies, introversion and extroversion, how a character is an introvert and how a character is an extrovert. That would be your mind style analysis. Do you know what is an ambivert?
Yes.
The mixture of both. so you can do the analysis. That's the easiest theory that you can remember in order to remember how cognition and psychology plays their part in mind style. Do you understand so far?
Yes.
That psychology has different theories to offer, and all those theories in one way or another can be taken into consideration either through linguistics, cognitive linguistics, and then come into the mind style, attaching this thing with stylistics, where you can do the narrative analysis or transitivity analysis, or how the characters thinks, what kind of shades they have. Every personality have different shades. For example, I must mention shadow self in Carl Jung's theory, where he says that shadow self is that self that you don't want to show to the world and you try to hide it. You try to suppress it in front of certain people. The best example, or exemplary example of this could be that abusive husband or a wife, they beat their husband or a wife in the locked room, but outside the room they are very lovey-dovey. You're my best wife, or you're the bestest of the world, but deep down under they have dark fantasies of beating their spouse. This is very common. देखिए कभी कोई ऐसे केसेस लाइव देखे आपने, ठीक है? उसमें क्या होता है कि जो शेडो सेल्फ है, इट टेक्स ओवर व्हेन दे आर इन द लॉक्ड रूम, बट व्हेन once they are out of the room, that urge to please the world, it comes out, and you change your personality, like Carl Jung called his mother day personality and night personality. Do you have a night personality? Yes, we do. All of us do. I'm not saying we are abusers or murderers or something, but we must have something that we need to hide, or we hide from the real world. You must have your lows, you must have your ups. And I have seen that people who are very lively and very into the life, they have their lows in the locked rooms. They don't show it to the world, which is a weakness. Yes? And you can definitely identify all these things in the characters yourself. Can you? You sure?
Yes.
Okay, tomorrow, I'll bring a short story and we'll do a mind analysis of that in the class. Now let's move forward. I would like to talk about two models that I've brought in. I teach psychology, philosophy as well. I teach ethics and social responsibility as well. I am a major in English literature. Come on, what's wrong? No, it's just that my interpretations have always had influences by psychology, philosophy and everything. In my FA, I studied English literature, philosophy and psychology. In my bachelor's, I studied applied psychology and English literature. Later on, I wanted to do a degree that was hybrid with English and psychology, but there was nothing like that. So I was told to go for English because it has more job prospects, and that's right. In psychology you have to be top notch in order to land a job, but English you can go to a school as well. That's not a problem. But I like psychology more, and I think psychology is everywhere. It's fun to read as compared to English, if you read. Well, it only depends how you think. Now this is again your experience. If you were from a family where psychology or psychologists or psychiatrists were normally presented and welcomed in the family, it would not matter like this. That is what general public says, that in order to understand the mental incapabilities, you have to go through it. William Blake, जो poet है, he said in his Songs of Innocence, then in order to understand innocence, you need to go through corruption. So in order to understand instabilities, you have to go through it. Alhamdulillah, you have not gone through it yourself. You're emotionally stable, you're financially stable, you're physically stable, so you don't understand. Once you get off the road and you have to come back, then you understand that what difficulties are waiting ahead. Characters की अगर हम बात करें, जिम एंड डेला, वो एक सीधी राह पे चल रहे थे, जितने 50 सेंट्स और $22 कुछ ऐसे उनके पैसे होते हैं उस पर चल रहे थे, लेकिन देन लव लव आ गया बीच में. लव ने क्या किया, उनको ड्रेल किया वो ऐसे लंबा रूट लेकर, लेकिन अगेन दे वेंट टू द वन पॉइंट दैट वाज एंडिंग ऑफ द लव. लव का ही उनका पॉइंट था. तो इट ओनली डिपेंड्स. एंड यू आर राइट, आई एम नॉट सेइंग यू आर इनकरेक्ट.
अभी रिसेंटली एक मैं पहले के फॉर्म से मिली एंड बाकी मर्द जो है नॉर्मल तरीके से बैठे वो ऐसे ऐसे कर रहे हैं ऐसे और उनको मिली है डिग्री, उनको सर्टिफिकेट.
It's just that your background knowledge is influencing you. Let's say you didn't know that he's a psychologist, it wouldn't matter. Right? मैं करती हूँ. I have hand movements.
मैम कुछ लोग ये भी कहते हैं जो बॉल पॉइंट पे यूज करते हैं उनका कोई साइकोलॉजिकल इशू होता है.
Issue नहीं है. This is not, issue is a big word. Hardship is a big word. ये बहुत harsh words हैं. आप कह सकते हैं कि कोई ट्रिगर है.
होता है,
बिल्कुल होता है.
कुछ सोच रहे हो
कुछ ना कुछ तो वो सोच रहे हैं एंड इट हेल्प्स देम. जैसे हिप्नोटिज्म की हमने बात की, वो टक टक करता ही तो कुछ कहीं आप स्वैप करते हो. सिमिलरली इट हैज़ समथिंग टू डू विद दैट. सर्टन वॉइस पैटर्न्स दे टेल यू टू डू सर्टन थिंग्स. आपको साइकोलॉजिकल डिसऑर्डर्स मूवीज़ में आपने देखे होंगे, स्किज़ोफ्रेनिया, बाइपोलर, social anxiety disorders, seasonal disorders, all these they have some kind of triggering point. Sometimes a little noise, in his case telltale heart, a vulture eye. So this is very common and it's going to be more common in coming decades because too much awareness is also very problematic. जो है भी नहीं हम तारी कर लेते हैं. जब हमें कुछ होता है, for example I have had very nasty back pain and when I search so many symptoms they match to my symptoms and I know everything and everything I have it. So yes, the man who was a hospital, I know.
डॉक्टर्स को सबकी समझ में गूगल पे अपने सिम्टम्स का भी आप सर्च करें, आपको लगेगा ये सब कुछ मिलेगा.
Absolutely. So again, this is our mind and cognition making us do things we don't want to. Yes. खैर ये तो हो गई हमारी जर्नल टॉक. लेट्स गो बैक टू व्हाट वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट. जी क्या जर्नल है? जर्नल इस तरह से थी मेरे लिए, आपके लिए कुछ नया हो सकता है. एंड इट वाज नॉट डिफिकल्ट. यू कैन डेफिनेटली रिलेट कर सकते हैं. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि मैं कुछ एलियन लैंग्वेज में बात कर रही हूँ. ठीक है, आगे देखें. आगे again it talks about this discipline which is irrelevant. You can read it at your own. Now look at the example. एक line है उसके आगे देखिए. Mind style is a concept in stylistics that refers to the linguistic and cognitive features that convey a character's thoughts, feelings and worldview in a literary text. So this is how you can remember what mind style is. The idea of mind style can be traced back to the Russian formalist Victor, who argued that literary language can differ from everyday language because it foregrounds the form of language and makes us see it in a new way. For example, in one of the very few first classes, you mentioned that when we read and reread a text, we come up with different layers of interpretations. Isn't that so? Now, when you know that id, ego and superego is a theory in psychology, and if you read another story now, you can relate to it and you can come up with a different interpretation this time. Why? Because you have a new piece of information with you. Isn't that so? Similarly, if you analyze the same story with Carl Jung's archetypal theory, you will be able to identify certain things out of it. यहाँ तक बात समझ आई? That the more information that you have from multidisciplinary approach, the more you have room for more approaches and more layers of interpretations. In the 1960s, M.A.K. Halliday developed the notion of transitivity to describe the way in which language represents the mental processes of characters in literature. So before we move forward to Fowler, whose model we are going to actually read in detail, M.A.K. Halliday used this terminology, that is transitivity. What comes to your mind when I say transitivity? Something changing, moving from one point to another. For example, Jim and Della, they move from this point to this only. But if we talk about Telltale Heart, that character moves from id to superego. That is transitivity, or a change, or taking a step forward or backwards by a character. And how do we know it? With the linguistic feature, with the speech or the write-up that is there when the character is talking to the policeman and himself or the readers. All these things, they help us understand his mind status at the moment, his mental process, what is triggering him, what is making him do certain things. So transitivity नहीं, poems का भी हो सकता है.
नॉवेल्स का भी लोग कर लेते हैं, नॉवेल्स का ऑब्वियसली
Poems का इस तरह से कि you will have to build a narrative within the story, within the poem. There are narrative poems as well. Have you read a narrative poem? Do you know Beowulf? Beowulf? Anglo-Saxons में Beowulf. Is it a narrative epic? It's an epic, but I'm not sure. It is a narrative. It's a कहानी. Definitely. Narrative है ना उसमें, पूरी Saturn and God and this.
पैराडाइज लोस्ट पढ़ी है भी तो
अच्छा कि आपने Wasteland पढ़ ली है? That's a narrative. Narrative of a world view, wars, everything happening around it. It is a bit complex and tricky, but it is possible. Nothing is impossible in literature. Of course, आप देखें शेप पोएम हो या वो बोन वाली पोएम हो, वो भी एक नैरेटिव मैं तो बना सकती हूँ. आई कैन मेक एनी पोएम अ नैरेटिव. दैट्स माई कॉल कि मैं उसको किस तरह से टेंजिबल बनाऊँगी. अगर आप चाहें तो आप उसको रूल आउट कर भी सकते हैं. बट अगैन द कम्प्लेक्स, और ये जो लोग हैं एम ए के हेलेडी, फाउलर, खलपेपर, सेमिन, ये कहीं ना कहीं से कोई तरीका आपको बता देंगे कि आप उसका कैसे एनालिसिस कर सकते हैं. सो इट इज़ नॉट दैट के इम्पॉसिबल है, पॉसिबिलिटीज़ हैं, राइट. सो ट्रांजिटिविटी हैज़ टू डू विद ट्रांजिशन. ठीक है, आगे देखिए. वन इन्फ्लुएंशियल मॉडल ऑफ माइंड स्टाइल इज़ डेवलप्ड बाय द स्टाइलिशियन पीटर Wardonk, who suggests that it is possible to analyze the character's linguistic choices in terms to their cognitive and affective characteristics. He argues that mind style is revealed through the use of certain linguistic features such as choice of verbs, use of adjectives, adverbs, and use of metaphors and imagery. So this is what he says. If you look at the verbs, adverbs and adjectives, ये क्या है? ये lexical analysis भी है. एक theory भी है हमारे पास, एक model भी है, and that is also a lexical analysis. So it becomes more complex. Lexical analysis आपने किया था जिसमें आप lexemes यानी words को देखते हैं for their repetition, how they are there. Metaphors हैं, simile है, alliteration है, etc. Same goes for mind style. But if you mention him, his name is Peter Wardonk, then you're going to only mention these terminologies that he has given in his model. Another model of mind style is developed by stylician David Lodge, who suggests that a character's mind style can be analyzed in terms of use of language, of self-presentation and social positioning. This is very common in Jane Austen's novels, where the characters, they introduce themselves to other people in a certain manner. These sisters and the five sisters and what is the family called? The Bennet family is introduced with the lower regards because they have 5 women to and they don't have enough dowry for it. तो वो social status जो है, positioning है, वो lower हो जाती है. तो जो उनके लिए words भी use होते हैं, they are different. Isn't that so? So उसका analysis आप कर सकते हैं. Again उसमें यही बात है कि आप you will read about that era's positioning, how women were positioned, how lower classes or the people who had no money were treated, and that is why that depiction is also available in the text as well. In summary, mind style is the key concept in stylistics that allows us to analyze linguistic and cognitive features of characters in literature. The concept has a rich history and has been developed by a range of theorists, each of whom has suggested different models for analyzing the linguistic features of characters' speech and thought. Like Hanaf said, that it has to do with speech and thought. उन्होंने identify कर लिया था, but she couldn't label it. Maybe now it does make more sense to you. Is it making sense? समझ आ रहा है? बात वही है जो आप करते आ रहे हैं. It's just the name on it, right? इसी तरह analysis करते हुए आए ना. Even if we talk about lexico-semantic analysis that we did for the J.P. Clark's poem The Night, उसमें भी बात यही हो रही है कि नहीं? लेक्सिकल लेवल पे हम लेक्सीम्स को ही देख रहे हैं ना. फिर आगे एक वर्डॉक्स मॉडल को मैंने 4 की कॉन्सेप्ट्स को अलग अलग लिखा है, वो देख लें. थॉट प्रेजेंटेशन, एवोल्यूशन, इवैल्यूएशन, स्टाइल एंड पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इज़ ऑलवेज हैज़ टू डू विद नैरेटिव्स. तो ये 4 चीज़ें आप एनालिसिस उसका कर सकते हैं विद द हेल्प ऑफ दिस मॉडल. फिर एक और मॉडल है, नीचे देखें, Fowler's model, theme, mood, register, cohesion and narrative perspective. अब इन दोनों का अगर आप क्रॉस कनेक्शन करें या एनालिसिस करें, both of them they talk about the same thing but they have different terminologies to show it. ठीक है, वर्नडॉक में सिर्फ 4 पॉइंट्स दिए हैं, लेकिन जो ये फाउलर है उसने उसको ज़्यादा सब कैटेगराइज कर दिया. इसने मूड को अलग कर दिया, पर्सपेक्टिव को अलग कर दिया है, कोहेजन की बात कर रहा है. सो दैट इज़ द डिफरेंस बिटवीन दीज टू models that you can opt in order to analyze any short story. Now what I want is, I want you to take a short story as short as possible and apply one of these models that you understand. Can you do that? जी बेटा, हाँ उसी पे कर ले, क्योंकि आप पढ़ रहे हैं, उसी पे कर ले, नो प्रॉब्लम. उन्होंने लिखी है, दैट्स ग्रेट. देखिए उसमें आप थीम तो आइडेंटिफाई कर लोगे, इतनी कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है. मूड भी कर लेंगे. व्हाट इज मूड? Tone of the text. He suggests that it can be conveyed through adjectives, adverbs and other evaluative language. So you are going to evaluate adjectives and adverbs within the story. आपको connotation और denotation का concept पता है? उस mood can help you with that. Mood में उसकी help हो सकती है. Register क्या होता है?
स्पेसिफिक प्रोफेशंस के लिए जो पर्टिकुलर स्पेसिफिक होते हैं वर्ड्स.
फॉर एग्जांपल
डॉक्टर्स की फील्ड में 5% प्रोटीन कैवियस स्लीपलेसनेस को इंसोम्निया कहते हैं.
राइट, ठीक है. सो यू डू अंडरस्टैंड. सो इफ डॉक्टर सोनिया हैज यूज्ड सर्टेन रजिस्टर, यू आर गोइंग टू आइडेंटिफाई इट. देन कोहेजन. व्हाट्स कोहेजन? This is the 10th time we are talking about cohesion, and you still don't know.
Organic pattern, we can say, for example, the character's language must relate with his mental process, the way he is. तो ये इस तरह का
बिल्कुल. Arrangement, logicality, and narrative perspective, first person, second person, third person, omniscience, and then there are other sub categorization. अगर आप लिस्ट खोलना चाहें तो आपको कम से कम 7-8 किस्म के और मिल जाएंगे narrative persons. तो ये आपको समझ आए. ओवरऑल फाउलर्स मॉडल प्रोवाइड्स अ फ्रेमवर्क फॉर एनालाइजिंग माइंड स्टाइल दैट इज सिमिलर टू वर्नडॉक्स मॉडल बट प्लेसेस अ ग्रेटर एम्फोसिस ऑन द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन लैंग्वेज यूज एंड द करेक्टर्स मेंटल स्टेट. सो फाउलर्स मॉडल इज मोर extended, it has more to offer and it will get you more marks if you attend your question with the help of this. All right, any questions?